So the final question of the show, which is actually two questions, but they both seem to be covering the same subject matter. This one, first of all, from Daniel M. The announcement from Sony that the PS5 is entering the latter part of its life cycle came as a shock to many people, given that we've only really just started seeing a good amount of current gen exclusive games within the past year or so. And even then, many titles are still launching as cross-gen. Like the breakdown of exclusivity we've been seeing as of late, do you think we could also be seeing a breakdown of the traditional quote-unquote generation model, simply due to the fact that it's not viable for many games to release exclusively on newer machines with smaller install bases? This one from Dark_BT. Hello DF crew, in brackets, exclamation point, exclamation point. Do you think the PS4 Pro slash One X may have watered down the generational leap into PS5 Series X? I'm still using my One X, and there hasn't been one game yet this generation that has made me feel the need to spend $500 to upgrade to Series X or PS5. I think if I had a One S or base PS4, though, an upgrade would be more appealing. Yeah, so this is something we've actually been talking about for a while now, and I was thinking about solidifying this within DF Direct to sort of get some commentary on this. I'm kind of inclined to agree with both of these guys that the mid-generation refresh, specifically the One X especially, did water down the impact of the new generation because, ultimately in 2017, Microsoft produced the best console it possibly could, and then it had to do the same 3 years later. And the pace of technological innovation isn't as strong as it was in the past. So I do think it had an impact, and that's why we had those really interesting head-to-heads between Series S and One X, where in some scenarios, I think, thinking Halo Infinite, there were specific advantages that One X had that Series S hadn't. So is it time, John, just to draw a line under all of this and say, right, the concept of a console generation doesn't seem to be working out anymore. Every 3 or 4 years, we're just going to produce a new console.
I'm kind of okay with that at this point, I feel.
Because you weren't back in the day,
No.
back in 2020 when we were talking about, because Microsoft came clean essentially with their cross-gen plans.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tricky one.
Do you want to have a think about
Yeah,
it? We'll go to
go
Alex.
ahead.
I think I agree with the gentleman here, especially Rich saying Xbox One X, especially because I find like the PS4 Pro is kind of half baked in my humble opinion. I think it's not as good as of a machine as Xbox One X is. Not just because it has a better GPU, but just like the rest of the things that are being upped with Xbox One X made it much more of a larger leap over its base console because it touched memory, it touched the GPU, feature set,
Bandwidth.
the actual bandwidth. The bandwidth is a huge difference. And I feel like that is much more of a like the next best machine. It wasn't just like a slightly better PS4 like the PS4 Pro was kind of in a lot of ways. So I feel like that is the really good thing. And I think it did actually water down the transition. It made it a little bit less exciting. But
it's a tricky one, right? Because if you sort of factored out Xbox One X, you would have a leap from One S to Series S and Series X, which in both cases I think would have been highly compelling. But One X was a really good console in 2017. And it did kind of muddy the waters there. But I agree with you about PS4 Pro, Alex, which is to say that it was underbaked. And there has been some conjecture from some people that it was actually originally designed to be a VR machine, which kind of makes sense. Double the GPU for double the viewports.
Right.
Yeah.
So the PS4 Pro wasn't as compelling, but probably sold more than the One X, ironically. So but still, the leap from PS4 to PS5 would have been far more profound. Yeah,
The leap from
have you had time to think that?
Well, so when I look about why things played out the way they did, it probably is this confluence of factors. The PS4 Pro may have existed because of this VR push, and they just decided to put it into a standalone that product. Xbox One X, I feel like almost had to exist to restore a certain level of faith in Xbox at the time, because the original Xbox One was kind of widely derided as not a great machine. And it was a misstep because Xbox was built on, we have the most powerful hardware of the available consoles. And even though PS3 tried to take that crown, it failed. The Xbox 360 was better hardware. I'm just going to say it. Xbox One was not a great machine. And this was like their chance to sort of try to come back and be like, look, we know. Here you go. This is much better for playing Xbox games. And I think it succeeded at that. And just because of that, it probably ultimately altered the way that they even think about consoles. And like, without that, we wouldn't be where we're at right now. So I mean, I do kind of enjoy that giant leap, but the way games are made these days, I feel like it's just not compatible with the old model anymore, with the traditional console model. I don't think it makes sense anymore.
It's an interesting point when you consider that if the strategy for Microsoft going forward is to have a handheld at one extreme and then, the most powerful console at the other extreme, inherently there has to be scalability. And I find it really hard to believe that a next generation handheld could do things that the current Series X can't do. So, there is still a strong argument to still support Series X with next gen.
Yeah.
If you've got a handheld that's
but maybe not Series S at that point.
Yeah, that would kind of make sense. I think they would eventually phase out the Series X though, simply because of the cost implications. It's still going to be an expensive machine to make, relatively. Because as Sony told us last week, the cost of making these things isn't going down. But yeah, it's an interesting scenario. I'm still sort of intrigued to see how Microsoft plans to deliver this, because they are effectively promising another generational leap.
The biggest.
Right.
The biggest, in fact. So, yeah, but I'm kind of coming down. Well, I certainly think on the PlayStation side of things, it would probably make more sense to move to that iterative model, simply because the results seem to have been borne out by this generation.
Right.
Yeah. Anything more to add to that? I mean, are there any other competing models? I mean, we just
Switch,
aren't getting the...
Where it's longer. 8 years, baby.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, yeah.
Yeah, the Switch is the competing model, and that's what Microsoft is looking to cover with a handheld Xbox, right? Seemingly.
Yeah. Well, what I mean by that is like the gap of time. Like Nintendo... Yeah. I mean, they've always done refreshes of their portables, but they really held on to the Switch as a platform for like a long time here. Longer than they've ever done in the past.
Is this the longest?
I think it is the longest.
360 is 2005.
More than the NES?
Wait, 2005?
NES is also a very long time.
No, yep. I mean, the Famicom NES was kind of replaced by like 1990 with Super Famicom, and right?
Yeah.
So it was like 6.
When did it come out?
It was 80. Was it 84? Mark,
why do I think 82?
Was the Famicom 84?
83.
83, right.
83.
Okay, there we go.
Also
okay.
a long
He's
time.
He's like my new Siri here, or like Alexa. Instead of saying Alexa, to say Mark.